Okay, so let's get started, folks. First on the agenda tonight is the county board. The county board candidates and all the candidates, I'll read the rules real quickly so we're straight with all that. Candidates may make 2-minute opening statements from the podium. Speaking order will be determined by drawing at the start of each panel and will be the same for opening and closing statements. Candidates will have an opportunity to field questions from the audience. Candidates who are unopposed will be allowed to make only a 2-minute statement and will not have an opportunity to answer delegate questions, nor will they be allowed to offer closing remarks. Candidate responses to audience's questions will be made from the table, not the podium, and are strictly limited to 1.5 minutes. 2-minute closing remarks will be allowed. Candidates may use their notes. So with that, let's get started with the county board race. And if I could have the folks come up from the county, Alan and John, and we can get this started. I think we've already drawn here, and John, you will go first.
Good evening, everybody. You know, when we were rendezvousing and kibitzing and all out in the hall, and I ran into Barbara Kanninen and I complimented her on her purple, and I said, Barbara, it's so nice to know that nobody thinks that I'm the only person who owns purple, which is absolutely true. And now I see Alan here with red, and nobody owns red either. Thanks very much, Mike. It's good to be back with old friends. The Civic Federation is more important than ever in contributing to our public discourse in Arlington County. I was a longtime delegate and Civic Association president myself, and you really are the lifeblood of Arlington County. Last March, I asked for your vote here as a candidate. Thanks to many of you, I won. And now, as your newest county board member, I'd be honored to have your vote once again on November 4th. This spring, Arlington shook things up. I won the special election with 57% of the vote. Arlingtonians endorsed our independent drive for balance, accountability, and a fresh perspective in local government. I can't take credit for everything, but since I've been on the board, we've lowered the property tax rate for the first time in 9 years. It was only a penny, granted, but it's a start. We freed up more bonding authority for more schools and additions to existing schools to address our capacity crisis. And we've directed the county manager to examine staffing levels for our fire and police. Of course, there's a lot more to do. As I advocated during the campaign, we're hiring an internal auditor, implementing a fraud and abuse hotline, and employee whistleblower protection. We've got to do a better job communicating with communities earlier and in a truly transparent fashion in locating public facilities, from schools to fire stations. And yes, I'll continue to push for emphasis on core services, not an Arlington streetcar of 7.5 miles and $500 million and counting, not fancy bus stops that even at a sale price of $500,000 each is still too much, and not a gold-plated aquatic center that the county still wants to build. Arlington elected me to make a difference. I have, in just a few short months. With your help, I'll continue to ask questions, and I'll not just nod my head. I'll approach every issue, as I always have, in a fair, non-ideological, and nonpartisan manner. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you all for being here. It's great to be back before the Civic Federation this evening, and I appreciate your hosting this important community conversation. You know, Arlington School started again today, and for the 5th year in a row, as I wave goodbye to my children, to get on the bus to head to a great school, but one that is significantly overcrowded. From packed metro trains, seniors concerned about aging in place, a regional economy dealing with federal cutbacks, we face challenges in our community. People are looking for solutions. That's why I'm running. I'm running to lead, to bring our community together, to deliver real results. On the board, I will be a strong voice for fiscal responsibility, just as I was on fiscal affairs. Where I called for lower taxes, I focused on efficiency, on maintaining parks, and on delivering innovation in government. But fiscal responsibility means not only being good stewards of today's dollars, it means making wise investments in schools, transportation, infrastructure. That's why I have called for a public lands process to find win-win solutions to school overcrowding, affordable housing, without sacrificing parks and open space. I was the first to call for a public referendum on the streetcar. Last week, I proposed ideas to improve the streetcar that responds directly to community input. And today, I laid out a plan to support our schools, because we face a set of generational choices that will affect our community for decades to come. And young families like mine have a lot at stake. You know, the best solutions come from the messy process of real community engagement, as the Civic Federation knows. And my record is one of bringing people together. That stands in contrast to my opponent, who has continued to focus on one narrow issue, on the streetcar. In fact, he put politics ahead of the needs of the community when he voted this summer against funding for school construction, for Metro, and for parks in the capital improvement program, just to make a political point. But that won't build schools for our children or secure a more prosperous future for our community. There is a clear choice in this election, and I look forward to your questions and the debate about the future of Arlington. Thank you very much.
Okay, folks, I've been handed a series of 4 people that are going to ask questions to our candidates. One is Ann Rudd. If you could come up to the center. Peter Fallon, Wayne Kubicki, and Catherine Scruggs.
Ann Rudd, Williamsburg Civic Association. If one of you is elected to the county board, what will be your focus?
Thank you for the question, Ann. I think it's an excellent one, and hopefully we laid out some of that in our opening comments. Really, my approach to leadership and to a complex and broad array of challenges that are facing our community, from housing that is affordable to a strong economy to, as I said, school overcrowding, is to really use the community engagement process to get to a better place, to get to better solutions. So, for example, that's why I called for the broad public lands process earlier this summer, because we have challenges in our community. We can feel the tension, and the Civic Federation has been at the forefront of the conversations around affordable housing and around park and open space preservation, around school capacity. And these needs are coming into conflict with each other, but they don't necessarily need to. And so I think we can and should be looking for, how do we get to win-win solutions? How do we think about it and look at examples like Arlington Mill, where we had affordable housing and we got a new community center. Look at Washington and Lee, where we got a new high school and in the process opened up more field and recreational space for a growing community. And that is the approach that I would bring to the county board. In terms of priorities, I think really focusing now on making sure that we meet the needs of our students and school overcrowding. Education, it really has to be the top priority for the county board and really is for the community.
Thanks, Mike. And the priorities that I'm focusing on as a county board member are really the same priorities that I campaigned on. I campaigned on being a nonpartisan, transpartisan fusion approach to issues. I'm not looking at issues through a partisan lens or an ideological prism. I'm looking at practical, cost-oriented solutions. I prided myself on being accessible. I've actually spoken to almost 24 civic associations across the county. If I haven't gotten to yours yet, I'm sorry. I'd love an invitation, not just to civic associations, but also to their officers, their directors, their boards. I've gone on neighborhood walks with civic associations. I visited particular neighborhoods who've had issues. Issues dealing with street paving, issues dealing with sidewalks and safe routes to schools. Issues dealing with building code violations, housing code violations, licensing issues, and that type of thing. I've also emphasized public schools. I was president of the Yorktown PTA. I co-chaired the school bond. I worked with my colleagues to free up additional county money from the school bond to give it to the schools so we'd have more capacity. Public safety. One of our frustrations is that we're growing, but we barely added to our police force in 10 years or to our fire force. And thanks to my efforts and the efforts of my colleagues, we're looking at safety at staffing levels for our public safety employees. And finally, neighborhood quality of life. I'm talking about things like building code violations, cracks in the sidewalks, the day-to-day things, not the grandiose projects.
Okay, Peter, you're next. And I would ask that Arlington Independent Media has asked us for you guys to move the microphones closer to you. And also, John, why don't you take this question first?
Okay. Peter Fallon, Donaldson Run Civic Association. My question is similar, but it has a different focus. All right. I've heard that it's difficult for voters and citizens to differentiate between candidates and incumbents. Can you please give 2 specific examples, with the exception of the streetcar? 2 specific examples where you differ from either the other 4 board members, okay, on policy matters or the implementation of policy. Not how you differ from each other, but from the 4 board members.
Okay. Peter, you're always a challenge. I would say, first of all, with respect to the super stops, you know, we've got $1 million super stop at Columbia Pike and Walter Reed, which I have spoken out against, and of course, you know, my colleagues have expressed outrage as well, and this has drawn national and even international ridicule for Arlington. Now the county manager says that she's gotten that super stop down to about $500,000, give or take. I would say that even at that bargain sale price, that's still too much. There is a 30% contingency built in. So could be 30% higher than $500,000, might be 30% lower than $500,000. I kind of doubt it. We'll see what my colleagues do, but I do not plan on voting for any proposal or legislation that's going to come in at $500,000 for a super stop. I took a vote with my colleagues a few months ago. It was a 4-to-1 vote. I was a no vote with respect to a contract which I didn't feel had been properly vetted and discussed with the county board ahead of time. It was just dropped on our laps. We need more sunshine in county government, not less.
Alan, I guess you could.
So I'll agree that, Peter, that's an excellent question. And, you know, I've had the opportunity to talk to literally thousands of people as I've gone around and knocked on doors, not only in the spring, but also through the summer. And a couple of things that I've heard from folks, and particularly from seniors who are concerned about the living in Arlington on a fixed income and the rising cost of living in our community. Certainly affordability is an issue and a challenge at all ages, really, in Arlington, but it's particularly acute for seniors. And you know, one of the things that I am interested in is, you know, can we expand the homestead exemption that we have in Arlington to make it more affordable for seniors who are on a fixed income to stay in our community? So that's certainly one. I think another one, which was in 2013. In April of 2013, as a member of the Fiscal Affairs Advisory Commission, I suggested that we return $6.5 million to taxpayers because, you know, I could see at the time that the effects of sequestration and of federal budget cuts were having an effect on our local economy, and we see that effect continue on today. So I think we have to be very cognizant and mindful of the spending and the tax rate and how that affects the ability of people to live and to stay in our community. And then, you know, reaching back a little even further would be the Hot Lanes lawsuit, right? And I think that has unintended consequences in terms of our relationship with Richmond and our ability to get done what we need to get done in Arlington for the betterment of our community.
Thank you. Wayne, it's your turn. I guess, Alan, if you don't mind going first.
I always like answering Wayne's question.
Alan, as a streetcar supporter, it probably makes sense for you to do this one first anyway. We've heard a lot about the construction costs for the Pike streetcar, but next to nothing about its operation once it's up and running. As an advocate, could you give us some details about the net operating expenses once this where you think that money is going to come from, and how much larger the subsidies might be under your recent all-green power proposal you've made. And while you're at it, maybe you can tell us what your idea is, who exactly is going to run it?
I'll say that I have the good fortune of having worked with Wayne on fiscal affairs in those conversations for a long time. So Wayne, I won't get into specific numbers with you. The operating costs, as I understand them, for the buses or for the streetcar are not that far apart, really, frankly. And when you look at the capacity and the economic development that will be driven by the streetcar versus the buses, it's I think a smart investment to make. Otherwise, we're foregoing billions of dollars in economic development. We're talking about passing on thousands of jobs in our community and hundreds of millions of dollars in tax revenue that can go to funding our schools and our social services. So, that's the investment, that's the choice, that's the history of Arlington, and it's worked out very well for our community. In terms of the proposals that I made last week, so I outlined 5 specific ideas that had come from conversations I've had with people about how do we make the streetcar work better. Because it's not just enough to say no, it's really how do we make it work for our community. And to your point, I proposed that we should look at, can we get to 100% renewable power as a source for the streetcar? It's going to be electric, and it's going to reduce our carbon emissions. And if we can get into a long-term power purchasing agreement, it may actually not cost anything more than what we have today. And that's the thing we ought to be thinking about. That's the innovation that I bring to the conversation and thinking ahead, not just about today, but about 5 and 10 and 15 years down the road.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to point out that the way to keep taxes under control in this county is not to spend so much, especially on lavish, over-the-top projects like a $1.7 million dog park, a $90 million aquatic center, a $500 million streetcar and counting, and a $1 million bus stop. But as far as the streetcar is concerned, let's get real here. We can implement a modified form of bus rapid transit system along the Pike and along Route 1, as we're already doing, by the way. We're implementing, Libby and I and the rest of my colleagues, I think most of them, we went to the groundbreaking for the Crystal City Transitway just a month ago, which is going to speed people in great time along Route 1, Crystal City, down into Alexandria. People want to get from point A to point B in the fastest amount of time, in comfort, in reasonable comfort, and at a good price. And the bus is the way to do that. Now, as far as operating costs are concerned, let's also be clear about this. The CIP that I voted no on, Alan's absolutely right, showed an incremental cost over current bus service of $5 million a year. So, we can say that it's not going to increase our property taxes to vote to construct the streetcar, but for operating costs, another $5 million a year, that's going to have to be funded by bonds. That's going to have to be funded by our tax dollars. There's been no proposed fare structure. We still don't know how much the things are going to cost. As far as green power is concerned, that is an unproven technology for something like the streetcar. It's going to be overhead wires, chances are.
Thank you, John. Catherine, John, if you don't mind going first on this. Last question, right.
Last question. Catherine Scruggs. I represent the Civic Federation on the affordable housing study for the county, and we've discussed the lack of housing that's affordable for county employees. 3/4 of county employees don't live in Arlington. What's your position on funding something like the Live Where You Work program, which the schools funds for school employees, or any other initiative to make it possible for these employees to live in the community they serve?
Thank you, Catherine. I knew your question was going to be about housing. You're always right on top of that issue. Alliance for Housing Solutions is really a great body for hashing out issues with respect to housing. So I recommend it to everybody. Affordable housing is absolutely one of the biggest challenges we face in this county. The number of affordable housing units has dropped in recent years. And, I'm accused of being a single issue candidate, and I'm not, because I've talked about everything from internal audit to the schools, but I don't think that the streetcar is a panacea for affordable housing, and it's certainly not a panacea for schools. Now, as far as workforce housing is concerned, I think we need to explore that. On teachers, firemen, police officers, waiters and food service folks, and our blue-collar service workers. We want an Arlington that's welcoming, that's diverse and affordable to everybody, and it's just really a question of how we're going to do that. So whether it is through additional committed affordable units or additional housing grants or a special program for workforce housing, I am completely open to that.
Catherine, thank you. I think that's a great question. You know, people do want to live close to where they work. You know, and we've got a lot of neighborhoods that are vibrant and accessible in our community. You know, I grew up on Jackson Street down in Kanninen, and I was a small boy when the metro opened up, and I don't think anybody could have foreseen the changes that would bring to our community. And one of the downsides of that was certainly that it brought a significant increase in housing prices as people realized the quality of life benefits that come along with having access to transit. You know? And in the intervening period, with the exception of the Silver Line, we haven't added a whole lot of transit capacity to our region, and we kind of see the effects of that with a supply and demand imbalance, and people really are willing to pay a premium to be in Arlington because it's a great community and because they avoid some of the other challenges that are living further out and commuting. So I think we should be looking at affordable housing, again, across all ranges of the spectrum, and I think employees are an important part of that. You know, my wife is and was a teacher, and I remember when she was starting out, the challenge of living in Arlington on a teacher's salary. And so we should be looking at workforce housing, particularly as the student debt overhang has grown, and thinking creatively about how do we meet the needs of these employees that we want to serve our community, we want to serve our children, so that they can be here in Arlington and living in the community where they work.
Okay, thank you, Alan. That concludes our question and answer period, and I think we move on to closing statements. And as the rules read tonight, I believe, John, you are up for a closing statement first, and then Alan.
She said it
was backwards? Okay, then Alan, you want to go first? Okay. Either way.
Oh, no! That's not what it said.
Same order, I thought it was.
Just that the woman who talked to us said it was.
All I know is in the rules tonight, when I read them, I think it said
Same order.
the same order.
You get to hear us both, don't worry.
I know Jay is here. Jay, I apologize for this water bottle, but one of my handlers did not get down here in time to deliver my water bottle. I do have one, as you know. Say again, Sarah?
Handlers or water bottles?
I guess both. Back in March at the Candidates Forum for the special election, I asked this question of all of you. Will the post-election headlines trumpet a reaffirmation of the status quo and business as usual? Or will the people of Arlington write a different headline? A headline that voters have added balance, accountability, and a fresh perspective on the county board. On April 9th, you woke up and the papers read, Independent breaks monopoly, and Vihstadt promises vigilance and oversight. My board colleagues are treating me well, our professional staff is incredibly helpful, and our message of core services and neighborhood quality of life, not wasteful and extravagant projects, continues to resonate. I promised to ask questions, and I'm doing just that. Like, why do 475 county employees, or nearly 1 out of 6, have county-issued credit cards? We asked developers for contributions for everything but public schools. Why? Where are we with the Metro Board and the investigatory wrap-up of the $1 million Superstop fiasco? What other transit projects will be deferred or nixed as a result of sinking millions upon millions into the streetcar? How can we do a better job of alerting neighborhoods to imminent plans for paving and other infrastructure work, and engaging them early on in a community engagement process for sensitive community projects with no surprises? Why won't Arlington, unlike surrounding jurisdictions, allow advertising on county transit stops? Asking questions and raising issues is not divisive. It's good government. It's responsible government. And in my view, it's essential that Arlington reaches its full potential for everyone. I need your vote to keep asking questions and find responsible, practical solutions for all. Thank you very much.
All right, so thank you again for being here tonight. As you've heard, our community stands at a crossroads, and we face stark choices. And the question is, which direction will we take? This is a fork in the road that we have seen before. I'll take you back to 1968 when our community was debating whether to invest in Metro. And the John Vihstadts of that day said, let's do buses up and down Wilson instead. Critics said Metro was gold-plated and it was an overbuilt extravagance. A decade ago, opponents said the same thing about the Silver Line, that it was too expensive and proposed more buses instead. Sounds familiar. They were wrong 50 years ago and a decade ago. Had they prevailed, we would be a poorer, more congested community today. And under my opponent's approach, we would lose out on billions of dollars in economic development, thousands of new jobs, hundreds of millions of dollars in funding for our schools and social services. He won't say whether he'd raise taxes on residents or reduce services or funding for schools. I am running because I am impatient for solutions and I will bring change because I am frustrated knowing that my children will grow up in overcrowded schools until they graduate unless we move with greater urgency. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and do our part to solve global warming. I'm impatient with streets that are still too dangerous for adults and children on foot and on bike. And I'm impatient to create more housing and better transportation that are affordable. The desire of people to call Arlington home clearly shows the value of the investments we have created to have the community we know today. And once again, we face a set of generational choices that will shape our community for decades to come. I will uphold the responsibility to carefully steward our resources. I will drive innovation in all that we do, and I will make investments in the future of our community. I ask for your vote on November 4th to move our community forward so that in 50 years, when others look back and render judgment, they will say they made the right choice and our community prospered. They were leaders. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, guys. That was very good. As you can see, both of them epitomize the Arlington way because both of them were going to do the closing statement. There was no real problem there. So now we move on to school board. And if the candidates for school board could come up. Okay. Okay, folks, I had to get some rules to the road fixed. All right, so tonight we have the school board candidates, and they have drawn tonight, and Barbara will go first, Audrey will go second, and Nancy will go third. Nancy is uncontested because you're in the special election in November, correct? And she will be able to answer questions. And then Barbara and Audrey are in the general election in November, just for clarity's sake. Oh, okay. So it's Barbara Kanninen, I hope I said that right, Audrey Clement, and then Nancy Van Doren. Okay, so with that, we'll get started with Barbara and then we'll move forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mike. Good evening, everyone. Happy first day of school. I'm Barbara Kanninen, and I am running for school board because I believe that together we can make Arlington Public Schools and Arlington the best that they can be. Quick bio for those of you who haven't met me. I've lived in Arlington for over 20 years with my husband, Kevin. We have two boys, Fred and Marcus, who are lifelong Arlingtonians and lifelong Arlington Public School students. Our older son, Fred, just graduated from Yorktown. He also attended the Career Center, and he is now a freshman at Penn State. And my younger son, Marcus, is in 10th grade at Yorktown. I'm an environmental economist and a children's book author. And I've been volunteering for kids in our schools and across our community for over 20 years. I call myself a candidate in hiking shoes because as part of this campaign, I have canvassed in all 52 precincts in Arlington. And I have learned that there are many issues that bind us together as Arlingtonians. Pride in our schools, love of our parks and green spaces, concerns about overcrowding, over-testing, and smart use of our resources. My campaign message has been responsive to these issues. My motto is every child included, because every child is more than a test score. We need to expand opportunities for all students to develop their critical thinking skills, creative, technical, and job skills. Every child needs personal support, and that means teachers need support. And with a rapidly growing student population, we need to ensure that every child gets a seat, but also a place to play and a safe route to school, every child included. Together, we can achieve this vision. Thank you so much. I look forward to this debate.
Good evening. I'm Audrey Clement. I'm running for Arlington School Board, and I seek your vote. When evaluating the candidates, county taxpayers should consider the following. 80% of Arlington Public Schools, that is APS, $500 million operating budget is funded by local taxes. Nearly half of every local tax dollar you pay goes to APS. APS's new 10-year, $453 million capital spending program includes $383 million to add more than 4,000 classroom seats or more than $95,000 per seat, which is exorbitant. On a per-student basis, Arlington spends more than any other school district in Virginia. In fact, we pay $5,000 more per student than neighboring Fairfax County. Arlington residents need a school board member who will stretch their tax dollars. Otherwise, increasing enrollments will outstrip our ability to support our schools and provide a quality education for our children. As a 10-year Westover resident and longtime community activist, I routinely urge the county board to invest in basic services like libraries and schools over wasteful capital projects. With a PhD degree in political science and classroom experience as a college instructor, I also strongly support APS's focus on academic excellence. Having served the U.S. House Subcommittee for Congressional Oversight of Special Education Programs, I remain a strong advocate of remedial education that benefits Arlington's disadvantaged students who don't perform as well as their statewide peers. If elected, I will work with my school board colleagues to streamline the budget and guarantee success for all Arlington students. I also will press for a more inclusive and transparent decision-making process that gathers input from the public before key decisions are made. Vote Clement on November 4th.
Good evening. I'm Nancy Van Doren, and I'm running for school board. I am in the special election to fill Noah Simon's seat, and will be on the ballot at the same time, but in a different slot, not to be confusing. I'm unopposed in that election, and the school board is currently considering whether to appoint me early to that position. They'll be hearing this Thursday evening, and then they'll make the decision the following Friday. So I'm very excited. I believe I'll soon have an opportunity to get in there and get my hands dirty and really understand the school system even more than I already do. I have 10 years of experience volunteering in just about every level of the school system and have very much enjoyed that and learned the system inside and out. I am passionate that every student have an opportunity to learn and do well in our schools, and we do a great job. We really, really do. I have 3 children in the school system, one who just started at UVA this last week. So I had first day of school in 2 different places this time. But I know what it's like to get kids through the school system, and I'll be taking that experience with me to the board. We have big issues before us. The CIP, the Capital Improvement Plan, will be looking at 2 different sites for 2 different issues related to middle school and elementary school. the TJ process as well as the Roslyn and middle school process, and I'm ready to dive into that and to work with all of you to decide what's best for all of us in this community, where best to put our schools and how best to use our resources to do that. I'm a New Englander, folks. I'm very frugal, and I will make sure, and I plan to make sure, that we use our money well and that we use existing resources well in the process. And most importantly, we collaborate really closely with the county. We have a phenomenal county here. I have lived in very poor communities and very wealthy communities. We have what we need to make a difference, and we're going to do it. Thank you.
Okay, it looks like tonight we're going to have 3 questions. And Jerry Collins, if Jerry could come up, that'd be great. Alan, I always mess up. Gujadar. Oh, he's messed up. I'm sorry, Alan. And then Peter Fallon's a double winner tonight.
Now I get all the luck.
Okay, Jerry, you go first, please.
Yes, good evening. I'm Jerry Collins, president of the Arlington Education Association. And my question is, how do you view the General Assembly's decision to grade Virginia's schools A through F? Why or why not would you support such an assessment system, and how would you address the needs of poorly rated schools?
Okay, I think that the system that we currently have is perfectly adequate to give us the guidance we need to improve our schools. Scores should be seen as tools to help us move forward. I think an A to F system is silly. It shouldn't happen. You don't tell your child when they come home with a report card with different grades on it that they failed. You give them incentives and ways to improve. So I would prefer to see, looking at the scores as we currently use them, to help us and give us guidance to move forward and improve, not as a penalty.
May I just add, that's the first question, but then how would you address the needs of schools that are poorly rated?
We only have one question. That's
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. It was like an elaboration.
I'm sorry.
Audrey, you're next.
Yeah, well, I definitely would agree with Nancy with respect to scoring. If it ain't broke, why fix it? Now, with respect to students who are not succeeding as well, the Virginia report card, which I've looked at rather closely, indicates that students who are less advantaged, usually, or including Hispanic students, economically disadvantaged students, and students with English proficiency limitations, are not performing as well, not only as their Arlington peers, but as their statewide peers, and that is a matter of concern. In other words, among those students who are disadvantaged across the state, Arlington disadvantaged students are doing even less well, which indicates that there's some kind of a competitive issue going on here, where students who are not doing well perform even less well, with the knowledge that they are less advantaged than their other Arlington peers. So what I would do is emphasize or de-emphasize learning by rote and more classroom participation as the way to go in remedying the problem of disadvantaged students in this county.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. It's a great one. We know, and I'm appalled by this law, and we did, it actually was on the books, and it was only after the recent election that the legislator pulled back. They still, I think, postponed the law, and it might come back in 2 years to be reconsidered. We know, unfortunately, for better or for worse, that test scores are highly correlated with income, with race, with speaking English as a second language. Schools that have high poverty and children who are most at risk get the lowest test scores. So a law like this punishes the very schools who are trying to serve our most at risk and in need students. And by the way, we were not at risk for getting a failing grade at any of our schools in Arlington. Our neighbors in Alexandria were at risk and were subject to potential state takeover recently because of this law. So I obviously do not support it. Very quickly, to address those needs, obviously, I like to say a big part of my message is that we have gone too far with standardized testing. Interestingly, It is the very testing that causes the achievement gap not to improve, because we spend so much time, teachers all over Arlington tell me, we spend so much time testing that we don't have time to teach the very kids that most need our support. So I would like us to de-emphasize standardized testing and get back to giving the kids the personal support that they need going forward.
Thank you all.
Okay, Alan, you're next, and Audrey, how about if you take the question first, and Barbara, you're second, and Nancy, you're third.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So I think we can all agree that the challenges facing the schools today are fairly well known, the CIP program, the capacity. But going beyond that, if you were to be given 20% budget increase next year, just out of whatever, where would you focus your funds? Would you focus it on helping your students, these students, achieve a better transition into college, or improving their testing capabilities, or something else like that? Sorry, this echo is really... Okay.
Well, following on with my earlier remarks, I would definitely de-emphasize testing, and particularly, and in addition to that, learning by rote. And I would emphasize remedial education for the disadvantaged in this county. One of the things that I've noticed is that the school board and the superintendent, and understandably, constantly trumpet the fact that Arlington students are performing well. For example, the latest press release indicates that they have done better, at least as well or better than their statewide peers on 33 assessments. 31 out of 33 assessments. But what they don't tell you is that the disadvantaged, the economically disadvantaged students in this county are doing less well than their statewide peers. That means that there is a growing gap between the majority who are doing well and a certain minority who are not doing well. And if I were given additional money, fiscal conservative that I am, I would gladly spend it on remedial education.
So thank you. 20% of the budget is $100 billion. That's a lot to work with. I'm really excited. That would be amazing. It's not going to happen. But I have a simple answer. A main part of my message is that all types of children, whether they are labeled special needs, whether they have unlabeled special needs, whether they're great students who occasionally have a bad day, all children need personal support. And if I had that kind of money, I would replicate what we do in kindergarten and provide classroom assistance in every grade, at least K through 5. In kindergarten, we have a teacher and a classroom assistant. So essentially, our student-teacher ratio is half what it is in every other grade in school. And when you look at kindergarten classes, there is so much that goes right in those classrooms. It happens to be the place where we have the lowest achievement gap. Students tend to, as they matriculate through school, the achievement gap starts to widen. So what are we doing well in kindergarten? The student-teacher ratio is a big piece of that. Teachers get down on the floor and look kids in the eye, and they get excited when the kid shows them the thing they brought in from the playground, like I have this new rock, and the teacher says, wow, that's really amazing. Personal support, where kids feel validated. Their interests matter. Their teachers are really interested in what they're doing, and they're able to pull those kids aside and work with them. So I would love to have a much better student-teacher ratio and do that. I have to caveat again by saying it is an unrealistic scenario.
Thank you very much for that bump in funding. As I've said, I've spent 10 years serving on various committees in APS and curriculum, special education, transportation. I think the thing I would spend the money on is training / professional development and investing in our teachers. I think we have the most incredible teachers. And in listening to them talk, I think most of the time they want desperately to serve every single child in their classroom, but they may need some coaching from another staff member or some specific training so that every child can be well included and well instructed in every classroom. So I'd spend that money on training.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This round, Barbara, you'll go first, Nancy second, and Audrey third, and Peter, you're up.
Okay, Peter Fallon again, Donaldson Run Civic Association. As many of you, my friends here know, today my eldest child started kindergarten at Taylor Elementary School, and in 6 short years, she will enter one of our middle schools. I'm hoping there will be at least one other middle school at that time to deal with the capacity issues. One, do you support accelerating classroom construction, okay, to deal with this? And how would you manage this differently than the current school board members have in the face of community opposition in selecting sites?
Absolutely, Peter, and congratulations to Alexandra. I hope she had a good day. My boys also went to Taylor. It's a fantastic school. Unfortunately, I've canvassed all over Arlington, and when I've met school parents with kids in elementary school already, I kind of worry because we are behind. We saw a large group of kids coming, and we needed to be prepared for them to get to middle school. We know they're going to get to middle school. Unfortunately, I don't know what you mean by acceleration, but what we do in the next few years in terms of creating schools, and I always say creating schools as opposed to building schools, is going to affect the look and feel of Arlington for the next 50. So we do have to be really careful and make sure that we're doing what's best for the full community. You know I'm a huge grassroots person. I fundamentally believe in community engagement. We have 3 different processes going on this fall. The school capacity process, there's a Thomas Jefferson working group, as well as the Roslyn group talking about the Wilson building. We need to have a cohesive conversation across the school and county divide and really work together to build great ideas. We can build amazing schools, new STEM programs, arts programs, lots of cool things we can be doing, but we need to get on it now and have the conversation.
Well, my particular interest is in providing the needed classroom space, the need for which I do not dispute, at much less cost than what the current CIP projects. The current cost of a new classroom in Arlington County is $2 million, at least $2 million. That's a low ball estimate of what it's going to cost according to our current CIP and the plans that go with it. Now, contrast that with the city of Alexandria. I know of one school alone, James Polk Elementary, which is providing classrooms, 15 classrooms at a cost of about $500,000 per classroom. And I am told that Alexandria has also using modular design on that school and 5 other schools to meet its classroom needs. Also, just today, I learned that Fairfax County has repurposed an old office building up on Leesburg Pike across from Seven Corners for a new, basically a middle school. And the cost per classroom there is about $33,000. That's a very rough estimate. The total cost is $20 million. Contrast that with Arlington right now, which will spend no less than $50 million for each new school that it builds. Each new elementary school is going to be $50 million.
Thank you, Peter. We need every kindergarten parent to be thinking like you and engage. The county just sent out a newsletter talking about all these different processes in which we all can become engaged. And it should be the parents as well as the community members, because we're going to have to be using existing buildings and potentially additional space to house the students as they grow up. Half the students right now who are of the children in the school system are in elementary school. It used to be that about many more than that. The larger percentage was always in elementary. Now it's half and half. So that's where we're moving. Today, 24,300 students entered APS or enrolled in APS. By the end of this month, we'll know where that figure is, but that's 1,000 more than they anticipated. So this growth is not stopping, so this is an issue we really do have to take on. But we as a community have to make some decisions. Where do we want those facilities? How do we want to use existing facilities? And that's why I think we really have to work so closely with the county on that and with all of you, because we also have to define what do we want middle schools to be like. Are they going to have 1,300 seats? Or are they going to have 1,000 seats? And a couple of the middle schools were already almost at that level. We have to make those decisions, and we're going to have to do it together, and we're going to have to get through this process quickly to make those decisions.
Thank you, folks. That concludes our question and answer period, and now we're going to move on to closing statements. We're going to go in the same order that we started with opening statements. So you guys are in the right order already. So thanks.
Thank you again, and thank you, Nancy and Audrey, for a great discussion. I do want to say a couple of quick things. I am going to be speaking at the school board meeting on September 4th in support of Nancy's early appointment to the board. As we've recognized tonight, we have a lot of work to do on the school board, and I'm very excited about her getting up there she is ready to serve, and it's a really amazing opportunity. I'm number 2 on the list to speak, so there's room for others to come and support Nancy. I do want to make a quick comment, too, about the Bailey's building in Fairfax. That is a grade 3 through 5 building. The school was so big that they actually put the grade 3 through 5 in that building. Grades pre-K through 2 are in the original building a mile away, and there's one principal for both of those buildings. So I do think we want to be careful about talking about modeling ourselves after some of the programs that are happening in our neighboring jurisdictions. We have great public schools in Arlington, but as we've discussed, we face an expansive set of challenges, and we need leaders on the school board who bring an equally expansive set of skills, experiences, and interests. I have volunteered for kids in schools for over 20 years as a coach, classroom volunteer, PTA leader, school board committee chair, founder of a sports league, and children's book author. I've served on county board committees in Democratic politics, and I've worked as an economist in government, academics, and the private sector. As I've canvassed Arlington, I have met so many talented, creative, and engaged citizens. Many of you are in this room. And I've met amazing kids. And I'm convinced that we can soar as a community, but we need leadership to bring us together, to work in constructive, positive ways, to help us work across that school and county divide. We need leaders who know the community's history, who can tackle the numbers, models, and finances. And at the end of the day, when it comes to our schools, we'll always put children in classroom learning first, every child included. Thank you all for coming out tonight. As I like to say, you in this room are champions for making Arlington the best place it can be. I would be honored to have your vote on November 4th, and if elected, I hope to do you proud. Thank you.
School board members recite statistics showing that Arlington schools are among the best in the state. What they don't tell you is that Arlington pays $5,000 more per student than Fairfax County to deliver a quality education. So why does it cost more to educate Arlington students? According to the Virginia Department of Education, the administration of Arlington Public Schools is top-heavy. In 2012, APS had 8 assistant superintendents, as compared with Hampton City and Richmond, which each had the same enrollment, but only 1/3 the executive staff. If elected to school board, I promise to streamline the budget while delivering a quality education to Arlington students. I will also make sure that new school construction costs significantly less than currently budgeted. Here's how. Provide more classrooms at less cost by building up, not out, with modular design, as Alexandria is doing. Achieve additional cost savings using preservation tax credits to rehabilitate historic buildings like Wilson School. Save even more by retrofitting existing buildings by installing renewable energy, solar lighting, solar heating, and solar electric power. While I support more seats for more students, I oppose classroom expansion at the expense of green space. If elected, I will lobby my colleagues to declare Arlington's remaining parkland off limits to new construction, consistent with the county's Natural Resources Management Plan, which calls for zero loss of county-owned natural lands. If you agree with me that Arlington needs to streamline its school budget and adopt a capital spending program based on community input rather than the dictates of a top-heavy administration, then volunteer, donate, or visit my blog at audreyclement.org and vote Clement for school board on November 4th.
Thank you. And do remember that there are actually 2 elections this election day, the general election and the special election. They'll be on 2 different lines. I am very, very excited to be on the precipice of serving on the school board. I have taught in a dirt-floored schoolroom in Nicaragua in Spanish, where I learned my Spanish. I have given away millions of dollars of grants in Hartford, Connecticut, to a school system that is the 3rd poorest in the country. And I've had the incredible pleasure of putting my children through this school system that serves every student so well. I am looking forward to engaging with all of you in the process we need to go through as we begin to decide how we're going to design and create a school system that's going to serve us for the next 50 years. We're going to need to do that in very close collaboration with the county. We have to do that, and we have to do it in a very fiscally responsible way. But I do believe that we can do it, and I'm really looking forward to getting the job done. Thank you.